I'm excited to be here this morning. Are you excited, church? Well, all right. It's a good thing to be in the house of God. We made it. We are here. God is with us and God is for us. And so there was a father who was trying to get his son not to quit so easily. And he said, "Son, you've got to hang in there and not quit." He said, "Look at Abraham Lincoln. He did not quit. Look at Thomas Edison. He didn't quit. Look at Douglas MacArthur. He did not quit." Then he said, "Look at Elmo McCringle." And the son said, "Wait a minute, Dad, who is Elmo McCringle?" And the father said, "See, son, he quit." Don't throw in the towel when the going gets tough. Don't throw in the towel when the going gets tough. Because how many know that life gets tough? Life is hard, isn't it? And so I titled today's message, "In the Valley." In the Valley. The Bible speaks of the valley in a literal sense that there are different valleys in the Bible that are referenced, and there are actual places that are in Israel or Palestine, and there were actual valleys. And sometimes these valleys would pick up different names for different accounts that had happened there, or maybe they're described by their terrain or their conditions. And how many know that is parallel to some of the things that we go through in life? And so the Bible uses valleys metaphorically as well. Anybody been through a dry season in their life? Or maybe a dark time? Maybe a time of barrenness. And so valleys are used as a metaphor in the Bible as difficult times in one's life. And so whether it's a circumstance or maybe a season that you're going through that is difficult, you can parallel that to a valley that you're going through in your life. And how many know, like I said, those descriptions kind of fit our life at times as we're going through difficult and challenging times of our life. So I want to name just a few to get us going. I don't know about you, but for me, it helps me a little bit. If I got a visual picture, it kind of helps me connect things together, especially with the Bible. It gives me a deeper understanding when I could see it in my mind and put it all together like Legos, right? Except for Legos are way expensive, so we don't really buy those, right? They get lost anyhow. But the first valley I want to look at this morning and want to just mention is the Valley of Siddim. It's the Valley of Sin. And this valley was located in the Sodom and Gomorrah area. How many know Sodom and Gomorrah was a valley that was lush? How many know that's where Lot chose to go? But how many know that it was also a valley where sin abounded? There was a lot of sin in that area, a lot of things going on that were against God, against God's standard. And so in Sodom and Gomorrah, the Valley of Siddim, the Valley of Sin, also was known for its tar pits, the slime pits. There was these tar pits that were in that same valley. And there's a battle that happened where the kings went out and they went out and fought. It was Sodom and Gomorrah, their kings against some invading kings. And what they did, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, they fled. And they fled and then they fell into these pits. And that was their demise. They got stuck in the pits and they were done away with. That's where Lot was captured. And Abraham, good old Abraham, had to go rescue him. Do you guys remember that story? Anybody remember that story? I hope so. It's like an elementary story, guys. But it is in that place where the kings fled, they got stuck in the pits. How many know, isn't that a description of sin? The valley of sin. Sometimes in our lives, we go through a valley of sin where we flee from something. We get stuck in the miry clay. And guess what? That's where the enemy comes, right? When we get stuck in those pits, in those pitfalls, in those snares and traps. And so you may be going through a valley of sin right now. How many know we don't need to be told that we're messing up? It's obvious, right? Everything's falling apart. It's pretty obvious. You're riding on rims, they're sparking. Might need a new tire, right? It's pretty obvious. So we don't need anybody telling us, but we need a answer. How many know God lifts us up out of the miry clay? He sets our feet on solid ground. He is our foundation. And so if you're here this morning and you're going through a valley of sin, something has overtaken you and overcome you in your life, know that there is help. Know that there is an answer, because how many know when you go through valleys, it feels like there's no way out at times, right? When you're going through difficult times, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so you may be in that valley this morning. Another valley that is mentioned in the Bible is the Valley of Elah, which is the valley of battle, or the battle or the valley of conflict. Anybody encounter any battles this morning? Some was just a battle to get here to church this morning, wasn't it? You're in a battle for your life. You're in a battle for your family. You're in a battle. You're fighting. You're battling discouragement. You're contending. There's conflict that you're facing. The valley of battle was, you can reference that as 1 Samuel 17:19, and it was the battle. It was that place where David and Goliath met. You guys remember that story? Where the two armies were separated, and you had the Israelites on one side, and you had the Philistines on the other side, and there is a great giant that is there. They sent out their best warrior, and he is defying God. He is speaking blasphemies against God, and here comes a little boy, a little shepherd boy, to bring some sandwiches to his brothers. And there's a conflict going on there. While the rest of the men were shuddering in their armor, he chooses to go out there and fight this giant. There is conflict. You may be facing a giant conflict in your life this morning, a giant problem. There is something that you are facing, and it seems like it's overwhelming. But how many know that little shepherd boy went out there with a slingshot and a couple of rocks? It's because God was working with him as he was tending the sheep, right? God had prepared him for battle, fighting bears, right? With his bare hands, taking on lions, doing what a shepherd does, and protecting his sheep. And so when he sees the giant, he already knows, my God is with me, my God is for me, who can be against me? Sometimes we got to be reminded that God is with us and God is for us. And so you may be in a battle right now. You may be in a conflict that looks overwhelming. But I want to tell you, there's a God that is greater than your conflict. There is another valley that is spoken of, and it's the valley of Eshcol. And that is the valley of decision. You could reference that to Numbers 13:23. Also, the slime pits, you can find that in Genesis 14:10. You can jot these down. The valley of Eshcol is a valley of decision. Eshcol was located inside the promised land. Remember the spies that went out and they were going to the promised land? The fruit was so abundant, they had to put it between a cluster of grapes on the pole, and took two guys to walk it out. It was full of, land was flowing with milk and honey. But there was a decision that had to be made. God's people were given a promise. They were out wandering in the desert, and God gave them a promise that I'm taking you into a land, but you have to go into it. They went out, 2 came out with a good report, 10 came out with a bad report, and they had to make a decision whether they were going to obey God or be disobedient to God. Whether they were going to go forward into the promise or stay stuck and not move and stay in the wilderness and die out. It's a decision that has to be made. You may be here this morning in the valley of decision, and you have to make a decision. Are you going to follow God? Are you going to trust him? Are you going to obey his word and what he has promised to you? There is promise in the word of God. He is giving you certain promises, but you have to make a decision. How many know people ride the fence as long as they can? 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But how many know you can't continue like that forever? It comes to a point in your life where you got to make a decision. You got to make a stand. Are you going to stand for God or are you not? It's pretty simple. So you may be in that valley decision. Maybe there's something heavy in your life this morning, and you got to make a decision on something that is weighing down heavy on you. Don't make that decision without God. Don't make that decision without God. Let it be the Lord who leads you this morning. And you may be here this morning, and you may be in the middle of a valley right now as I'm speaking to you. You know how you know that God is in the room? When you sense the quietness. Because I believe that there are people in here that are facing many valleys in their life. And just like the father in my illustration who was trying to encourage his son not to quit, I believe our Father, our God, is encouraging someone here this morning not to quit, not to give up. Because you come to that place where you feel broken and hopeless and there's no way out, but God is telling you, do not quit on him. How many know God will not quit on us? He will never leave you nor forsake you. He is always with us. Don't write me off this morning, guys. You may say, oh, my kids probably told on me in Sunday school. That's why he's preaching this message. How many know that God does speak through us once in a while? I don't know everybody's circumstance and everybody's situation, but I know that God does. God sees where you're at. God sees what you're going through, and know that God is there for you. And so you may be in a valley right now, and it seems like no way out, but there is. Don't quit and don't give up on the Lord. You know, as I'm going over this last night, and I've been going through this message and trying to kick it around, I was thinking about all the times that God has brought me through many valleys in my life. So many different challenges that I've gone through, and he's been faithful through all of them, church. God has been faithful through each and every challenge that I faced for the last 16 years of my life walking with him. He has never let me down. He has never failed me. He has always been on time. Even if it's at the last minute, he has always been there. And I'm no different from you. And so if God did it for me, he can do it for you. And I was thinking about that last night, all the different things, all the different areas of my life, because in different areas you go through valleys, you go through difficult and trying times of your life, whether it's marriage or kids or work, your ministry, all these different things. There's so many things that we go through and so many different valleys that we encounter. And I'm thinking about that. I'm like, Lord, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. You've took me here, you took me there. When I didn't know how it was I couldn't see, or I didn't even know what my next step was. God, you were there. You've been faithful. And you recall all those times. That's why the Israelites would put up memorials every time God would show up, so that when they came back around, they would remember what God has done, where they met him at, and where God had met them. But I'm thinking about this, and I said, man, God has a sense of humor. You know how? Because I'm going over this message, talking about valleys, and I'm going through my mind of all the things that I've gone through, all the valleys, and I said, man, Lord, you sure are funny. Because here I found myself at the heart of the valley. Guess where it's located? In the Central Valley. I said, Lord, you are funny. You got jokes. How do we know laughter is good for the soul? I bet you God gets a kick out of us, doesn't he? I've been told before that on numerous occasions that I'm never serious. My wife always tells me that all the time. She doesn't never. I'm always messing around. But how do we know sometimes it hurts so bad you just got to laugh? Man, life gets rough. You just got to smile. Know that God is with you, church. And so there's 3 things I want you to know about valleys. And the first one I want you to write down on your outline here is that valleys are inevitable. Valleys are inevitable. Meaning they're just a part of life, you guys. Valleys are a part of life. They're inevitable. They're going to happen. It's not a question of if they're going to happen, but it's a question of when they're going to happen. See, we're either coming into one, we're in the middle of one, or we're heading out of one. So valleys are inevitable. They are a part of our life. They happen to us. You can't go around them. You can't go under them. You can't take an overpass to skip over it. How many know that through life you go through challenging times, right? Anybody ever just skate through life with no issues at all? Anybody here? All right, so this is the right crowd this morning. Praise God. They are a part of life. Peter says this in 1 Peter 4:12, and it's on your outline there. He says, dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. You ever find yourself in a situation, in your difficulty of life, in the valley, saying, how did I get here? I'm a good dude. Why am I going through this? Why is this happening? It's a part of life, guys. It's a part of life. Peter says, don't be shocked. Don't be surprised when you have entered into a valley. Don't get caught off guard. Don't be like you're the only one that is going through something. Because I guarantee you, each one of us in this place have gone through some things in life. We have gone through some difficult and challenging times. So don't be shocked. Don't be surprised when you're going through it. You may say, why me? Well, why not you? Are you special? You're not like the rest of us? Why not you? Why not me? Our Lord went through difficult times, and we are no better than our master. So if he suffered, guess what? You and I are going to go through a little bit of suffering as well. And so don't be caught off guard. Don't be surprised, you guys. Peter is suggesting that we should consider it as a normal part of our Christian experience. So there's your encouragement for the day. Part of our normal Christian experience when we go through valleys. We should consider it that it is normal for us. That we will pass through sufferings and times of trying and testing. Anybody that has walked any length of time with the Lord, how many know it's not all cakes and pies all the time? It's not always cakes and pies. It's not always dandelions and butterflies. We go through difficult times of our life. How many know that that's part of God's plan? That in God's plan for us, there are hills, mountaintops, and there's also valleys. It's a part of God's plan for you and I. It's a part of God's plan. Secondly, if you write this down, impartial. Valleys are impartial. meaning they happen to everyone. Do you feel like you're the one always getting selected for that valley? Or you feel like if you didn't have bad luck, you wouldn't have any luck at all? Guess what? That's for all of us. They're impartial. They happen to every one of us. Valleys happen to every one of us. Psalms 34:19 says, good people suffer many troubles, but the Lord saves them from them all. So it is the Lord who helps us during these difficult times. He is with us even though we're going through difficult times. He is there with us. We are his servants. We are good people. We're trying to do the best we can to live for God. But guess what? Life happens, right? Things happen. It is part of life. We live in a broken world, a broken society, and things just happen. But God is with us through those sufferings. He is the one who helps us through those times of difficulty. They happen to all of us. It's like bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people, right? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed your neighbor that's always just got it going on, never seems like they never have a struggle in their life? And here you are just trying to make it to church Sunday morning, right? Bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. It's not on your outline, but you can jot this scripture down. It's Matthew 5:45, and it says this: for he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. So this is life. Valleys happen. The sunlight is on both of us. Rain, it is on both of us, both good and bad people. So just know that it's impartial. How many know that none of us are exempt from facing difficulties in life? Peter even takes it a step further and says in that text that I was using, he goes in the next verse, which is not on your outline, but he begins to talk about you should rejoice when you encounter struggles in your life, when you encounter suffering. Anybody get there yet this morning? Maybe at the end when I see when I'm on the mountaintop, maybe, but when you begin to get into the valley, you begin to go into the difficulty, when you're pressed and stressed on all sides, it's a little difficult to rejoice then. But that's what Peter tells us to do. He says, rejoice when you encounter sufferings. I haven't arrived there yet, so I can't preach on that, but when I do, I'll let you guys know. But the thing is that he's with us, church, in those valleys. They're impartial. They're inevitable. They're impartial. And Peter does say we should rejoice when we encounter those things. The next is, if you write this down, valleys are unpredictable. I didn't have room to put this on your outline there, but I want to reference, which most of us know, to the Psalm of David of chapter 23, and it's going to be verse 4. It's not on your outline, but I want to read it out for you. That's Psalm 23:4, on a reference to being unpredictable. The valleys are unpredictable. It says, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Your translation might say, even though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And there is an actual valley in Israel that is named the Valley of Shadow of Death, and it was a steep and deep canyon that was said to be a small pathway that you can travel on, and that the mountainsides were about 600 to 800 feet on either side, and so it was very steep and very rocky and very narrow. And the only time that valley or that canyon would get sunlight is when the sun would be directly overhead at noontime. Would be the only time there would be light in that canyon and in that valley. And so, other than that, it was dark. It was gloomy, shadowy, and people that would travel on it, it would be unpredictable because it was a great place for thieves to hide out and lie wait, for people who were traveling on that path to get robbed, and sometimes unpredictable, they would lose their lives on that path. It was dangerous. I mean, life can be like that. Life can be unpredictable. Life can be uncertain. We never know what's going to be around the next corner or the next bend in our life, and sometimes we find ourselves being caught off guard. How many know that our lives, when we're going through difficult times, sometimes could feel dark and gloomy and unpredictable? We know that valleys are unpredictable, and it's like you can't plan them and you can't time them, right? The valleys in your life, they're unscheduled. Anybody just get themselves ready and say, you know what, God, today I want the valley. Anybody wake up in the morning and say, today I want the problem, Lord. I'm prayed up, I'm fasted, I'm full of the word I've read all week long, and I'm ready for the problem, God. How many know it doesn't happen like that? They come at the worst times, don't they? They're unscheduled. They usually come at the worst time when you don't have time or you're unprepared. When life is unpredictable and becomes uncertain, how many know those valleys can become very dark and very discouraging times? But one thing I want you to know is that when you're in those times, when you're going through something dark of your life, when it's unpredictable or uncertain, I want you not to get stuck in that place. The valleys are not meant for you and I to get stuck there. But how many know when we go through hard times, we have a tendency of setting up camp? We're going through a struggle in our life, and we begin to, you know what, we're just going to stay right here. It's the path of least resistance. It's easy right here. I like crying. I like being down, and we stay in that very place, that dark place, that discouraging place. But we are not to be stuck there. We are not to set up camp there and stay a while. It is a temporary place. It is a moving through, a going through. It's not a place that we set up camp and become a permanent residence of the valley. David said, I walk through. David said, I walk through the valley. That I'm passing through the valley. I'm not going to be there for a long time. So know this, church, that valleys and difficult times are a temporary time. It is just a season or a moment, but it's not a place that we would stay and set up shop. It is a place that we walk through. It is a temporary place. I know that it's in the valley where we remember how to depend on God. It's in that place where we come to in those dark times, those testing times, those trying times, where we begin to remember how to depend on God. It's in the valley where we're emptied of our self-reliance and our strength and our know-how and our go-to, and we begin to remember what it's like to depend on God. Has anybody's strength run out? Has all your resources run out? The valley is not always a bad place. Some things happen in the valley, and it's there where we remember to depend on God. You know, God allows us to come to that place where He is the answer again. God lets us go through these things because He is the answer. He'll allow us to go through these valleys and these dark times and these testings. It's not to break us. It's not to destroy us. But nevertheless, it's to build us up. There's something that goes on in the valley that can't go on anywhere else. We begin to remember He is the answer. He is who we depend on. There is a fruit that is produced in the valley that it can only happen in the valley, in that season of life. It's where God begins to cultivate something in you. He begins to clean up some things. He begins to plant something in you. He begins to water you. He begins to bring growth in your spiritual life. But that fruit cannot be produced anywhere else but the valley, you guys. We know He turns your test into a testimony of His greatness and His goodness and His power. A lot of times, the fruit that is produced in the valley is not realized until you're on that next mountaintop. I mean, the vantage point is all the difference. When you can see in hindsight and look back, oh, Lord, that's why I went through what I went through. That's why I've gone through those hard times. There was something you were doing in me, Lord God. So doing something in me so you do something through me. Sometimes our valleys benefit others and not just ourselves. So what you go through, what you encounter in life is for maybe someone else's benefit. Don't quit and don't give up. How many know everybody wants the blessing, but nobody likes the process? Everybody wants the blessing. Everybody wants the end result, but we don't want to do to get to that end result. Everybody wants to be buff, but nobody wants to go to the gym, right? I got that issue, as you can tell. I want to look buff. I want the muscles, but I just, man, you know what? Weights are heavy. Man, they're heavy. Nobody wants that process. It's God's process that He brings you through some things. He's doing something in you. And that type of fruit can only be produced in the valley. You'll recognize it once you get to the top and be able to enjoy it. You'll be able to look back and say, oh, Lord, now I know. Thank you. You're with me the whole time. David said, for you are with me as I walk through. You're not alone. He is with you. 1 Samuel 1:7 says this, year after year it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle. Each time Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. So I want to look at Hannah's life here and just kind of go over some things of Hannah's life, her valley, what she had went through. And there's a valley that is in the Bible as well, and it's called the Valley of Baca. The valley of weeping or tears, or a place of grief and sorrow. And you can reference that to Psalm 84:6. If you're taking notes, you can jot that one down. It's the Valley of Baca. It was a dry, barren desert land. It was if you wanted to go to Jerusalem, you had to pass through the Valley of Baca. It was a dry place. It had harsh terrain. It was a place of difficulty, a place that was challenging to get through. But if you wanted to go to Zion, you wanted to go to Jerusalem, it was a pilgrim. The pilgrims would have to travel through when they wanted to go that way. It was a place that had to be gone through. It was dry. It was barren. There was bushes. There was thorns. There was predators. There was all these different types of opposition and difficulties in Baca. But it was known for weeping. And I seen that it was fit for Hannah here in our scriptures, who was reduced to tears and wouldn't even eat. As you know, Hannah was barren. She didn't have any children. And it says here that year after year, the same thing would happen. Is anybody in that circumstance? You don't have to raise your hand or say me. But year after year, or maybe it's been week after week, maybe it's been month after month that you're in this difficulty that you're facing in this valley. Hannah it was year after year. How many know that's a long time? How many know that can get weary? You get tired. But Baca was a dry land. It was barren. It was a place of difficulty and a place of challenge. Hannah was not dealing with the issue. Not only was she dealing with the issue when she went up to the tabernacle, but it was probably a constant thing. How many know these were two wives? It was wife number one and wife number two. How many know that's the issue right there? I'm just saying, I'm just throw that out there. That's the issue right there. Wife one, wife two. Elkanah had a lot on his plate. But nevertheless, it was an internal conflict. It was not just when they went to the tabernacle, but you can guarantee that it was going on at home as well. So it was like an everyday, constant conflict and battle that she was being taunted and being, how many know she felt probably ashamed, because back then if you didn't have a child, it was like God had cursed you. And so she was probably dealing with a lot of shame and a lot of different emotions. And here she had her rival just on her all the time. And sometimes it's like that as we go through valleys. You may be in a valley and you're just weeping. You have nothing else but to grip tears. You're going through a difficult time. So year after year, this happened for Hannah. She was in a difficult place, a long time in a valley. She was reduced to tears. How many know it's bad when you're crying? When it causes you to cry. When it causes you to sob and to pour out and to weep. You're going through a tough time. How many know it's really bad when you don't eat? It's really bad when you don't eat. In other words, she couldn't function. She couldn't eat. She couldn't function. It was so heavy that she couldn't even find herself to get the strength to eat. How many know conflict can do that to you? Number one, if you write this down, what do you run to when life gets bad? What do you run to when life gets bad? There are so many vices that people run to when they enter a valley, right? When life gets tough, sometimes you want to take the path of least resistance. Let me tell you, it's not always the answer to take the path of least resistance. Don't look for the quick fix, the temporary relief. It usually leaves you unresolved, and the issue only gets worse in your life. 1 Samuel 1:11 says this, and she made this vow, O Lord of heaven's armies, if you would look upon me, my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut. In the valley, she sought the Lord in prayer. How many know sometimes that's the last thing we want to do when we're going through difficult times? It's the thing that it should be our go-to, but a lot of times we're going through it, we don't even want to pray. We don't even want to pray. Hannah ran to God, and she took it to prayer. And how many know it was a long period of time? So it was constantly. She was constantly going to God, constantly praying to the Lord. Her prayer was a similar language, descriptive like those who were in Egypt in bondage at the time. And the people of God cried out to God and said, look at me. And so her language is in that sense, telling God, God, you did it before for our people. You have looked down and you've seen, you heard our prayers, you answered and you delivered. God, do the same for me now like you've done back then. Hannah also made a vow, and she asked, Lord, if you give me a son, I will dedicate him back to you for his entire life. I will took the Nazirite vow that no razor would come to his head, and he'll be separated for you. That's pretty awesome, because the very thing she's asking for is the very thing she's going to give back to God when God answers her. Some of us want the blessing, just want to hold on and keep it, don't want to use it for anything else but ourselves. But she said, Lord, bless me, give me a son, and I will give him back to you. Number 2, if you write this down, what promises did you make in the valley? How many know when we're in bad spots, when we're in tough times, we make all kinds of promises, don't we? When we get caught in a jam and God, just, Lord, this one time, if you just help me. Guys, this is a famous one if you've ever been in jail. Lord, if you let me out of jail this time, I guarantee you I'll get it back together. I'll go to your house, Lord. Bail me out, mama. We say all types of things when we get into jams, especially when we're going through difficult times. We come before God and we ask God and we make all kinds of promises. Oh, Lord, if you only blind her one more time so she'll fall back in love with me again, God, I'll get it together. So we know it takes some blinding sometimes for our wives to love us. For me anyways. I think the Lord blinded my wife. She should have gave up a long time ago, but she stuck it out. And now she's blessed. We say all kinds of things when we're stuck in a jam. God, I'll do X, Y, and Z if you only help me, God, in this situation, in this valley. Ecclesiastes 5:5, it's not on your outline if you want to jot that one down. It says this, it is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. So if you'll write this down, keep your word. Keep your word. If you make a promise to God, if you make a vow to God when you're in the valley, keep your word because God will keep his. God is faithful. I got this from a Christian rapper. He says, do what you said you would do if God blessed you. Keep your word. Do what you said you would do if God blessed you. God comes through on his promise. If he is faithful, because he is, he will. Keep your word. Do what you said you would do in the valley when he blessed you. 1 Samuel 1:15-16 says, not so, my Lord, Hannah replied, I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. It was an unordinary prayer. The priest didn't even recognize it. He thought that the woman was drunk. It was kind of early and she was already, tipping. It's not 5 o'clock yet, ma'am. He didn't recognize it because it was out of the ordinary type of seeking of the Lord. Her lips are moving and she's sobbing and she's crying. She says, no, I was pouring out my soul. Because that's how deep it was. That's how much she was in grief of what she was going through. And sometimes we got to just pour it all out. Everything that we have. Pressing into the Lord. She said, I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Sometimes we got to dig down deep in prayer. How desperate are you for the Lord to intervene in your situation? How desperate are you? Number 3, write this one down. Give everything you have to Jesus. Give everything you have to Jesus. Mark 12:44 says this on your outline. They all gave out of their wealth, but she out of her poverty put in everything, all she had to live on. This is the encounter of the widow who was going and she was giving an offering, and our Lord Jesus, he was standing back watching everybody bring offerings in. And so what does this have to do with what we're talking about? It's a spiritual principle that I want you to grasp. Because this woman who was a widow, she didn't have no husband, she was a woman during this time, and she was poor. How many know that's a valley? She was going through a valley, but she demonstrated something, a spiritual principle. She gave all that she had and put it in and said, here. What that says to me is that this woman was trusting God with all that she had. Everything she had, she gave it to him. She gave it to the Lord. She was trusting God with all that she had. She was trusting God with her life. And sometimes we might not have much, but whatever we have, it's not about what you don't have, it's about what you do have. Sometimes all we have is tears to bring to the Lord and say, God, this is all I have, and we give it to him. See God move mountains in your life when you're in the valley. Trust the Lord. Catch that spiritual principle. It was a motive of the heart. Isaiah 57:15 says this, for this is what the high and exalted one says, he who lives forever, whose name is holy. I live in a high and holy place, but also with the one who is contrite, lowly in spirit, to revive the spirit of the lowly and to revive the heart of the contrite. God doesn't only live in heaven, but he lives with those who are broken and contrite in spirit. He is there to revive us, to bring us back to life, because sometimes we go through valleys and it seems like we are just dead. We have nothing else. But God is in those places. God is in that season with you, and he will revive you. He will bring you back to life. He will renew you and re-strengthen you and refresh you. Psalm 138:6, I wrote this one down, and it says, though the Lord is on high, he looks upon the lowly, but the proud he knows from afar. So write this down. Number 4, you are not alone in the valley. You are not alone in the valley. Sometimes it's the valley that seems that we are by ourselves, that there is no help. I want to tell you, God is with you. When you're lowly and you're contrite and you're in that place where, you know what, it feels like I'm by myself, know that God is there, and God does his best work when we are out of the way. So I want to close with this scripture. I'm going to call the worship team up, and I want to close with our last scripture on your outline there. 1 Samuel 2:8 says this. This is after God answered. We know the end story. We know that God answered Hannah, that God brought her through that valley, that she did receive that gift of a son. And this is 1 Samuel 2:8, and it says this, he lifts the poor from the dust and the needy from the garbage dump. He sets them among princes and places them in seats of honor, for all the earth is the Lord's, and he has set the world in order. You may feel like you're in a garbage dump. You may feel like you're in a bad place, like there is no hope, no way out. It says for all the earth is the Lord's, and he has set the world in order. That means he's in control of everything, you guys. He's a God who is sovereign, who is powerful, and there's nothing that gets by him that he doesn't know. And so he puts us in the place of honor. So you may feel like maybe you're worthless, maybe you're going through something like, I'm not even worth looking at. God is with you in those places. God will lift you up. God will set you in a place of honor. If you would bow your heads with me this morning, I just want to close out. I always want to give the opportunity, church, that when we come to God's house, that we don't leave the same, and that if there's anybody in this place, every head bowed, every eye closed, you're in a valley this morning, I want you to know that you're not alone, that God is with you, and that there is hope, and that the valley is just a time or a season that you must pass through, but know that he is with you. David said, for he is with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I know that I'm not by myself. But first thing is first, I want to ask, is there anybody here that maybe has strayed or maybe has drifted from the Lord, and you want to make it right today? If you would like to receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior, would you lift your hand this morning? Is there anybody in this place that you need Jesus? Just raising of a hand. Amen. I see your hand. I see your hand. Praise the Lord. I just want to encourage each and every one of us that God is with us. And I want to say a prayer for those who are in need today of a Savior. If you would repeat this with me, church. Dear Heavenly Father, I come before you a sinner, and I ask forgiveness for my sins. I believe that you died on the cross and that you rose on the third day. Come into my heart as my Lord and as my Savior. I believe you died for me, and I believe you rose on the third day. Teach me how to walk through the valleys with you, that I may come out on the other side the way you intended me to come out. In Jesus' name, amen.